Hi everyone, welcome back. So let's start with a new Aeon topic, which is the truth of photographs. So let's see what this is for. It's often said that a successful picture capture sense of subject, but a great photographer does so much. It is written by the Daniel Starr, is Associate Professor of Philosophy at Boston University. He is the author of Knowing Better Virtue, Deliberation and Normative Ethics 2050. He is writing a book on photography. And let's start with our Aeon topic. Let's start with the first passage of this Aeon topic. What is whole for us? The preeminent Victorian portrait photographer Julia Margaret Cameron wrote that when photographing important subjects, my whole soul has endeavored to do its duty toward them in recording the greatness of inner as well as the feature of outer. Consider this portrait of Cameron's niece Julia Jackson. Many of the Cameron's most interesting portraits were of women. It's a powerful and distinct image. Suppose you were asked to explain what makes it such. Having just read what Cameron said she was trying to achieve with her portraits, you might be tempted to say something along the lines of it captures the essence of the person being photographed. This is, in any case, the sort of things one tend to hear said to good portrait photographs. Of course, a few qualifications might also be added to head off criticism. I mean, it like captures a particular moment, something significant of the essence of the person's beginning, being photographed. Perhaps it will immediately be admitted that it is difficult to know whether or not this photograph does really capture something significant of Jackson's essence, given that no one now alive knows what she was like. So, so what this passage is saying? The preeminent Victorian portrait photographer Julia Margaret Camerson wrote that when photographing important subjects, my whole soul has endeavored to do its duty towards them in recording the greatness of the inner as well as the feature of the outer subjects. So, here the preeminent Victorian portrait photographer Julia Margaret Camerson say that while photographing while photographing any subjects, our whole soul is devoted towards duty, towards recording the greatness of inner as well as features of outer of that particular subjects. She devotes herself too into that so that she can just present the beauty of that particular subject both inwardly or outwardly. Consider this portrait of Cameron's niece Julia Jackson. Many of the Cameron's most interesting portraits were of women. It is a powerful and distinctive image. So here author is saying that the portrait, considering the portrait of Julia's niece, Julia's niece, and this portrait is very powerful and distinctive image. Suppose you were asked to explain what makes it such. Having such read what Camerson said she was trying to achieve with her portrait, you might be tempted to say something along the lines of it. Capture the essence of person being photographed. So here the author is trying to say that he said to say, suppose you were asked to explain what makes it such, why she is taking photograph in such an enthusiastic way. Having just read of what Cameron said she was trying to achieve with her portrait, you might be tempted to say something along the lines of It's captured the essence of the person being photographed. Whatever the photo she has taken, firstly, it's mentioned that her photo, most of the photo is devoted to women. So, whatever the essence of the person who is photographed, her main focus is to make it powerful and distinctive. This is, in any case, the sort of thing one tend to hear said to go a good portrait photograph. Of course, a few qualification might also be added to head of criticism. I mean, it's like capture at a particular moment something significant of the essence of person being photographed. It says that nothing we can pre-plan while capturing someone's photos. Sometime what makes a photo great or impressive? Sometime a particular moment, some of the significant essence of the person being photographed. That's particular special moments called a good photograph. Perhaps it will immediately be admitted that it is difficult to know whether or not this photograph does really capture something significant of Jackson's essence, given that no one now alive knows what she was like. So here authors say that it is difficult to know whether the person to know whether or not this photograph really captures something significant of Jackson's essence, given that no one now alive knows what she was like. Still, author says that he doesn't have any evidence whatever the Jackson says that same portrait in her photographs. But now there is no one to explain, no one alive to explain how she was like, what she likes. And it is a Jackson's nice picture which is captured by the Jackson, Julia Margaret. And what we can and the passage is continued here if you just see that. What should we make of the tendency to describe portrait photographs as capturing something of the essence of a person at a certain moment? I would suggest that despite this great photographer's endorsement of something like this, thought we should be wary of it. I can be misled as a standard of describing good portraits, and it can be stultifying when it is treated as an ideal to be aimed at by portraitists. There are many different ways that portraits or photographs of people more generally can be aesthetically appealing and valuable. The tendency to gravitate towards ideal should generally be resisted. Tempting as it may be, it should be resisted on both artistic and philosophical grounds. Let's start by unpacking the qualified claimed itself. What author is trying to say here is that what should we make of the tendency to describe portrait photograph as capturing something of of the essence of a person at a certain moment? I would suggest that despite this great photographers and endorsement, something like this thought we should be wary of it. Here, author is trying to say that describing the portrait photograph is something is essence of people at certain moment. means we never knows at what moment it's so imaginative, it's so impressive while capturing the photograph. Sometimes we capture the photographs unplanned and we never know that it's turned out to be a great work. So that kind of a thing here author is trying to say. It can be misleaded as a standard of describing good portrait, and it can be stultifying when it is treated as an ideal to be aimed at by portraitists. It can be mislead. The picture, which is termed as a good portrait, it can be mislead. People can mislead it, but which is there are many different ways that portraits or photographs of people more generally can be aesthetically appealing and valuable than the tendency to gravitate towards this ideal should generally be resisted, tempting as it may be. It says that not just one angle. We can just justify or we can see the same portrait with different angles. Maybe the idea behind the author is something different which we even can't imagine. Who knows that? So just by one point of view on that particular portrait or photograph, it's not valid. That doesn't make any sense, or that's not fair. It should be resisted on both artistic and philosophical grounds. Let's start by unpacking the qualified claim itself. So we can see this kind of pictures and photographs from both artistical ground and philosophical ground. We never knows what the mind of the author or the painter or the artist at that time. So So, what is the title of this whole passage? Is The Portrait by Julia Margaret and her philosophy behind that. And what we can take from here is that first is recording the greatness of the inner as well as a feature of the outer subject. And it causes the as capture the essence of the person being photographed. This is in any case a sort of the thing one tend to hear said a good portrait photograph captures at a particular moment something significant of essence of the person being photographed. And another from here. It can be mislead as a standard for describing good portrait, and it can be stultifying when it's treated as an ideal to be aimed at by portraitists. It should be resisted on both artistic and philosophical grounds. That's all for this passage. Let's moving toward the next one. To begin with one of the qualification, there is the idea of capturing a person at a moment in time. In fact, early photographs, such as the one of Jackson ever, typically had long exposure time. Sitter would need to put significant effort into staying very still. Even a small moment could leave trace in the final photograph. Cameron actually thought of the softness produced in her portraits by the movement blur, as well as by imprecise focusing as a positive feature of them. Even after it becomes possible to use much faster shutter speed, it remains the case of this day that light events are still recorded by cameras during a period of time rather than a moment in time. So, what author is trying to say in this particular passage is to begin with one of the qualification, there is the idea of capturing a person at a particular moment in a time. So qualification begin with the idea of capturing a person at a particular moment in a time. In fact, in early photographs, such as the one of Jackson's above, typically had long exposure time. Sitters would need to put a significant effort into staying very still. Even a small movement could leave a trace in a final photograph. Here, the author is giving the examples like in Jackson's ever picture, which is the exposure of time, long exposure of time, where the sitter would need to put significant effort into staying very still. Even a small movement could leave a trace in a final photograph, where the Jacksons, Margaret, Nice need to sit still for a very long period of time because her every single move, a small move, can leave a trace in final photographs. Cameron actually thought of the softness produced in her portrait by movement blur as well as by imprecise focus as a positive feature of them. Here, Cameron tried to bring the softness in her portrait by the movement blur and with imprecise focus as a positive features. Even after it becomes possible to use much faster shutter speed, it's remained the case of this day that light events are still recorded by cameras during a period of time rather than at a moment in time. Here, author is saying that even after the much faster shutter speed, still people use camera for still use camera for light capturing the light movement. So, what is the title of this whole passage is How Cameron Capturing a Picture, a Portrait. And what we can take from here is that first, the idea of capturing a picture person at a moment in time. Sitter would need to put significant effort into staying very still, and even a small movements could leave a trace in the final photographs. This also. This softness produced in her portrait by the movement blur as well as imprecise focusing as a positive feature of them. Light events are still recorded by the cameras during the period of time rather than at a moment in time. So that's all for this passage. Let's moving toward the next. Okay. When we consider that it's not common to take photographs at such a speed of 1/100 of second or faster, it's easy to think of this as being more like taking a photograph at an extent moment in time. But the moment blur that can appear in photographs taken even at speed as high as 100 of second put the lie to this thought. Recording of the moment in photographs do not straightforwardly correspond to anything in normal human vision, and the possibility of using a long exposure time is still often treated as a creative option with very different outcome depending on whether we are taking about a long exposure of 1/4 of a second as in this photograph I took recently of pedestrian in Boston as I waved my camera just so or leaving the shutter open for a second or minutes. The latter is common when it comes to landscape photography, where the chopping water may appear smooth for instance. So here what the author is trying to say that when we consider that it's now common to take photograph at a certain speed of 100th of the second or faster, it's easy to think of this as being more like taking a photograph at an exact moment in time. But the moment blur that can appear in photographs taken even at speed as high as 1/10 of the second put the lie to this thought. So your author is saying that while using the photograph at a certain speed, which is the 100 of a speed or faster, it is easy to think this is an being more like a taking a photograph at an exact moment in time. But the moment blur that can appear in photographs taken even at speed as 100 of second puts the lie to this thought. While capturing the photo, nowadays we can just so speedily we can capture the moment. We thought that we are capturing the moments at the right time, but sometimes it doesn't happen. That's why author says it's a lie to this thought. Recording of the moment in photographs do not straightforwardly correspond to anything in normal human vision, and the possibility of using as long exposure time is still often treated as creative option with very different outcomes depending on whether we are taking about a long exposure of 1/4 of second as in this photograph I took recently a pedestrian in Boston. I waved my camera just so or leaving the shutter open for a second or minute. The latter is common when it's come to landscape photography where the chopping water may appear smooth for instance. Here's the author describing about his experience at Boston's pedestrian site where he just uses camera and within a second he just smoothly captured the moment at that time. So that's all for this passage and what it's trying to say. What is the title of this whole passage? The title of the whole passage is How the Moment Capture with Speed of Time. And what we can take from here is that first, it's easy to think of this as being more like taking a photograph at an exact moment in time, but the moment blur can appear in photograph taken at the speed of highest 100 seconds. That's it. And another one is recording the moment in photograph do not straightforwardly correspond to anything in normal human vision, and the possibility of using long exposure time is still often treated as creative options. So that's all for this passage, and that's all for today. Let's continue this Aeon tomorrow. As of now, have a great day and goodbye.